Welcome to the Valhalla Filmcast. I am Bryce Thompson. I am here with Cody Ryrie and Brian Hammond.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
Today is a special day of the Valhalla Filmcast because we have a new series of shows that we're going to bring to you. We're going to call them Director Fights. It's going to be kind of like a tournament-based battle between Cody and Brian. They'll each take a director every couple weeks and tell me why they think they're the best director and why they think that they should be called the best director of all time. So this week is going to be Ridley Scott versus Christopher Nolan. Cody has Mr. Scott and Brian has Mr. Nolan. So the way we're going to do this is at the beginning of each battle, we will flip a coin and we'll switch off who gets to call it. So today Brian can call it and he calls heads or tails. Whoever, if he gets it, then he gets to choose if he wants to go first or if he wants Cody to go first. And we'll go from there. Each will give a opening statement of why their director is the best. Then after that, they will then tell me why the other director is horrible, which will then give an opportunity to defend. And we'll go from there until I decide to call it and to say who is the best director, who wins this battle. So let's go ahead and start. Brian, give us a call. What do you call, heads or tails?
Heads.
It is heads.
Nice.
Sweet.
So
Cody,
what do you
you're
wanna
up.
Okay, I've only seen like 4 football games in my life, but it seems like if whoever wins the coin toss usually makes the other team go first. So I guess we're staying true to form
Sometimes, yes.
on this. Anyway, okay, well, it's my turn. I have picked, as Bryce said, Ridley Scott as my director to represent. Sir Ridley, as he is known, having been knighted, is an elderly chap now, but he is best known for his films like Gladiator is probably his most well-known. Black Hawk Down is another one. Most recently, his most recent film was The Martian with Matt Damon, which was up for several Oscars and was very successful financially. His most prestigious films, at least in the world of film geeks, are Alien and Blade Runner, I would argue. And the reason I think he is such a wonderful director is because I think he understands cinema language and cinema craft better than almost anybody out there. And that comes from years and years of practice, of actually doing the work. He started off in art school. He's a very accomplished artist as well. And then from art school, the Royal Academy of Art in England, he went off to work for the BBC and then on to do commercials. He did over 2,000 commercials before he ever made a film. And that was, as he calls it, his film school. And he learned all about lighting and lenses and camera speeds and how to make one room look like 6 rooms and all those little tricks and tools that you need to make a film. And then after that 15 or 16 year stretch of just making commercials, he went into feature films. And his first film out of the gate, a movie called The Duelists, he won the Best Director prize at the Cannes Film Festival on his first movie. And then he made Alien, which is still considered to this day by many to be one of the best horror and science fiction films of all time. And then one of my big pushes for why he is an awesome director is going to be around Blade Runner. Because in his career, he's a very prolific director. He makes, like one movie every 2 years. He's constantly working. And if you want to pick those movies out, Alien, for example, was a really big, successful film. And then Blade Runner lost money. It was not a successful film. But because of the quality of his vision and how original it was, nobody had quite seen anything like this or this kind of story told. Over the years, it gained a following and gained a following and gained a following until now. It is always named with 2001: A Space Odyssey and with Star Wars as possibly, arguably, the best science fiction film of all time. But another thing that makes him such a fascinating storyteller is he's not just a sci-fi storyteller. His first film, The Duelist, was a period piece. He made a movie called Thelma and Louise, which was up for several Oscars that year, that is a crime comedy, like buddy movie with two women, which is very unusual. He's made other crime films. He made a movie called Matchstick Men, which is also another comedy. He's not afraid of periods, like I said, but also when he worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, he made a film called Body of Lies, which tackled the terrorism and surveillance thing head on, but in a very entertaining thriller format. I guess my point being is there's nothing that he can't do story-wise. If you want to do pure fantasy, he made a movie called Legend that has elves and the devil in it and all this stuff, and it's a very fascinating little cult film now. If you want a science fiction film, then we've already talked about that. If you want a movie about current events that's very relative right now, you've got Body of Lies. And if you want a war film, he's made one of the best modern war films in Black Hawk Down. So that's what my main points are for why Sir Ridley is such an amazing filmmaker, is through his work as an artist, through his work making commercials, he has learned how to tell almost any story, and he tells them really, really well using the language of film. They're not just plays that are put on camera. The way he moves his camera, the way he edits, the way he dresses a scene and works with actors are all essential reasons or essential versions of the story. And so that's why I think he is one of our best living directors. And that's it for my opening statement.
All right. All right, Brian. Let's hear your opening statement now.
All right. I chose Christopher Nolan, as you all know. The reason I chose him is because in the short, just barely over a decade that he's been making films, well, it's almost 20 years now, but he has touched upon just about every genre. Given enough time, I'm sure he will hit every genre, as Sir Ridley Scott. And he finds it, he perfects it, and he divides and conquers that genre and moves on. He's not someone that dawdles into different genres. He likes to be done with it and move on. He got his start. His first feature film was called The Following in 1998. Before that, he had a few short films, and he had been, kind of behind the camera since he was 7 years old. His father's camera, just making, short films and experimenting, kind of honing his craft. In 98, his breakthrough was Following, like I mentioned, and it kind of took the film circuit, the awards and things kind of by storm. This new director that was up and coming. It's this kind of this noir, gritty, voyeuristic film where a writer, he follows, looking for source material to write his novel, begins following people on busy streets and kind of is under the tutelage of this criminal after he meets with them for a bit. And anyways, it kind of is a wonderful throwback to the noir genre. And by the way, it is in the Criterion Collection, that film, his first film. That's how impressive it was. His next one was Memento, which he kind of stayed with the noir, the neo-noir genre in that as well. Gritty crime, mystery thriller that keeps you captivated. Now, he has a very interesting directing style in which he oftentimes will use non-linear narratives to tell the story. And specifically with Memento, he really perfected this. Now, although he was not the one to invent this, obviously, many could argue that is the best representation of a non-linear film that's ever been created. Telling two different stories, about the same person, but two different timelines of the same person, one moving forward, one moving backward, and it all culminates at the very climax of the film where in one transition shot, not to give spoilers away, but in one transition shot, the two narratives merge, transitioning the black and white to color. And it's just some could argue that maybe it's a gimmick, but it is executed so perfectly that it really sells the film and just leaves an impact with you forever. In fact, I kind of this film I kind of esteem as one of the first films that really made an impact on me to help me start experimenting more and digging deeper into films that just aren't served to you on a platter, that make you think, that really push your boundaries and make you sit on the edge of your seat and pay attention. He's gone on to, as you know, do superhero genre, which is something that most prestigious directors probably wouldn't touch. But not only did he make a successful of it, the biggest grossing superhero franchise. Am I correct in this, Cody? You probably know better than I would.
Per movie, yeah, probably. I mean, it's hard to compare it with Marvel because there's like 13 movies.
Per movie.
I think
two of them. Sure. Two of them grossing over 1 billion each, respectively, and so he took this genre that has been done over and over and over, and did original things with it, touching on the personal aspects of the life, building character driven plots that develop and quilt this story together. Not quite as non-linear as some of his other films, but an excellent films. Prestige is another one. His first period piece that he filmed. He's actually doing one right now called Dunkirk, which is a World War II novel, but we'll have yet to see what that is, how that's going to pan out. Inception broke all sorts of new ground with that film. If you haven't seen it, it's this film where it blurs the line between reality and dreams. These men can enter into people's dreams and manipulate them, and can plant these ideas in these people's brains to make them do what they want to. It's just an inventive concept, very unique and original, and really has been copied many times since. The style of that film, with the effects that he used with mirrors and with bending reality and kind of time and space as well, with buildings and stuff. You see that all the time now in trailers. To my knowledge, he was one of the first, if not the first, to really manipulate that space. Gosh, the last one, Interstellar, was incredible as well. So he's done a space feature as well. He's one that has these projects that he does that he wanted to do for a long time. He does them, he masters them, and he moves on. And there's no telling, what's in store for this guy. Yes, he has not been around as long as Ridley Scott, so time will tell. But given his track record so far, he has his trajectory in the right direction, and it's only going to go up from here. I guarantee it. So I guess that's my opening statement.
All right, Cody, I'd like to hear why Christopher Nolan is inferior to Sir Ridley Scott.
Well, I like that we've all adopted the Sir Ridley thing. Look, it would be, I think it would be foolhardy of me to not acknowledge that Christopher Nolan is an incredibly talented artist and has frankly blown away me and anybody in this generation that's seen his films. It's an amazing thing to see what he's accomplished in relatively such little time. And we can also see when people have taken up other characters like Batman before and after him, how amazing his vision for some of these things is. So I want to put that out there because I don't want it to sound like I'm this idiot who's totally missing out on how amazing Christopher Nolan is. I'm not. But I do think there are some things mostly related to his age and his experience that do make him a little bit less accomplished than Ridley Scott. First thing I want to talk about was Brian's point that he picks a genre and then he perfects that genre and then he moves on. And I definitely see where he's coming from with that, but I would argue that in a lot of ways he's only worked in one genre his entire career, because he starts off with the kind of noir, we talked about this, or Brian did, the noir crime genre. And then he moves on to Batman, but his vision of Batman is a very noir crime vision for what Batman is. And then you move on to The Prestige, which is a period piece, but it's very much a dark, gritty, noir look at a period piece. And then we get into sci-fi with Inception, and that is, again, a crime story with very dark, noir overtones done in science fiction. So he stepped away from that a little bit with Interstellar, and I'll get back to that. And also Dunkirk looks like a big departure. So he may be, in my humble opinion, moving away from that, but so far in his body of work, I really don't feel like he's branched out a ton. I feel like what he's done, he does very well, but it's hard for me to imagine, a buddy comedy from Christopher Nolan at this point in his career. It may happen, but at this point, it's hard for me to imagine him doing that or, something along those lines. While it's not hard for me to imagine Ridley Scott doing a buddy comedy, because he has done it. And also, a lot of the strengths that Christopher Nolan brings to the table, this is a director fight, it's not a writer fight. And I think that Christopher Nolan's biggest strength is his genius as a writer. The key impetus, the reason that Memento is a fantastic and amazing piece of work, is based in the script and in the idea of the writing. And the same goes for The Prestige, and the same goes for Inception. These movies are amazing in the script stage, and that's really the key defining thing. The way they're directed is competent, but that's not what makes them the amazing pieces of work that they are. It's all based in his genius as a writer. And Ridley Scott doesn't do a lot of his own writing, but his strengths are in the visual storytelling. So, for example, this is my last point I'll make on this, or I'll have 2 points. One, the Christopher Nolan, being a self-taught filmmaker, like Brian talked about, his craft sometimes can be a little rocky, and so when he wants to explain a point, instead of using the language of film to show us something, he'll tell us something, because he has his degree in English, he's a very good writer, and so that's kind of his crutch, is he'll rely on voiceover or somebody explaining something, like Anne Hathaway's character in Interstellar. Instead of us somehow seeing how important love is as a part of the universe, or as a bond between people, Anne Hathaway gives a monologue about it. She talks about it. And it's not a bad monologue, but I think if we're talking about strengths as a filmmaker, as a director, we have to give preference to Ridley Scott, who knows how to tell a story using the visual language. And my last point is, I think that Christopher Nolan, at least up until this point, like I said, has not been the best at bringing emotion into his stories. His stories are very, very cerebral. They're usually very ingenious, but they don't have the same emotional punch. I'll give an example of this too. In Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down, there's the one scene, and for those of you who have seen it, where there's an injured soldier and they're trying to perform surgery on him, and they're trying to get a hold of this vein, and it keeps slipping back up in this guy's leg, and at a certain point they lose it and they can't get it back, and they know that he's going to die, and then they lie to him about the fact that he's going to be just fine. And there is more emotion, and that's just one scene that I picked, more emotion in that scene than in any one of Christopher Nolan's films. There's not a lot of emotion there because the focus is on the writing, on the structure, and that kind of cools whatever emotional content. Now, he's tried to bring emotion in like Interstellar, but the problem is, instead of causing emotions in the audience, oftentimes it just translates to the actors having a lot of emotion, which doesn't necessarily cause emotion in us. So just that one example from Black Hawk Down was a really devastating emotional experience, and there's several throughout that film and a lot of his others that I think is just an example of time and experience that I think makes the films of Ridley Scott a more cinematic experience than Nolan's, and also a more emotional experience than Nolan's.
All right, Brian, your turn.
All right. First, just to counter a few of the things he's said, Cody. I agree to some extent the point you're making about the noir. However, I feel that that's more of a stylistic kind of leaning that he has. I kind of argue that really the true noir film is the following. A good neo-noir that kind of blends modern with that traditional noir genre would be Memento. And Insomnia, while it's a gritty crime thriller, I don't really necessarily consider that a noir. And kind of the same with the rest of the films, although he does have stylistic leanings that kind of delve in that. He's been reported many times that he, that's one of the biggest influences of him is, a noir, amongst other things. But so obviously that is a big part of his, kind of his stylistic vision of things. I see where you're coming at, Cody, as far as the personal touches. There is, a lot of movies out there that are very emotional, that can make you cry, can make you feel all these different, broad spectrum of emotions. I think that's a valid point, Cody. Chalk one up to you. I think that while there is emotional characters in there, those those gut-wrenching scenes that make you cry, that some might say are unnecessary and cheesy. They're not necessarily in his films. He does rely heavily on the story. Him and his brother are excellent writers, but I kind of take a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't see how he's a better writer than director, personally, and I think that while he is an excellent writer, that maybe that's some of the shortcomings of writing is the long narratives and monologues, rather than doing it visually. And so if anything, I would say that the writing is where those downfalls lie, with those personal touches that just aren't in the script, and he portrays the vision of what's on the script quite well. As far as Ridley Scott goes, there's going to be some tongue-in-cheek comments on here. Obviously, neither of us are idiots. We know that they're both excellent directors, but this is for your entertainment. And so, let the games begin, I guess. Ridley Scott, he has only been nominated for 4 Oscars, has not won one, 35 wins and 84 nominations of other awards. And let me just make sure I got that right. Yeah. Okay, so here's Nolan's his lineup. He has been nominated 738 times for 738 different awards. He has won 446 awards, 8 Oscar wins, and 2 Oscar nominations. And that's only in 10 feature films. You look at the filmography of Ridley Scott. I should have written it down how many films he's done, but there's probably like 30 or something like that, a little over 30. And to have that track record of the awards, and that's not saying that awards base good films, whether they're if it doesn't get nominated for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It just means it wasn't necessarily submitted sometimes or whatever. But I think that track record speaks volumes. Again, that's 738 nominations for awards and 446 wins. It's an incredible track record, and it's just exciting to see where he's going to go next with Dunkirk and beyond. So I guess that's my counter and plug there. So.
All right, you got a rebuttal, Cody?
Yeah, just a quick one, if that's okay. I think it's a travesty that Christopher Nolan has not been nominated himself for directing. He was nominated for writing for Memento, I think. And like you said, his movies, if you work with Christopher Nolan, then you seem to get nominated a bunch and win a bunch of Oscars. But for some reason, they keep ignoring him. And I just want to say that's silly, because if anybody deserves it, he does. And Ridley Scott has had his own issues with the Academy. He's been, like I think he said, nominated 4 times, but he's never won. And I know that it really bothers him because he's only human, I guess. But yeah, just to give you something there, I
bothers
think
me too. Truth be told.
Yeah, I think that other people have seemed to recognize both filmmakers a lot more than the Academy has, and screw them. But my last point I wanted to make, the last really big, and this is not a against Christopher Nolan, this is a pro Ridley Scott argument I wanted to make. The reason I picked Ridley Scott is one of my favorite films of all time is Blade Runner, and I don't know that you've seen this one, Bryce, but that doesn't really matter, because the point I wanted to make is Blade Runner is revered for many, many things. Number one, it's considered, like I said, one of the best science fiction films of all time because of how well it's made technically. It's one of the best shot movies, it's one of the best designed movies, one of the best costumed films, one of the best acted. And so it has all these things that technically make a great movie. And then at the end, it has this monologue. As one of these characters is dying, he gives this monologue that is considered also one of the most emotionally devastating moments in any movie as well. And so it's a movie with all these amazing technical achievements, which he always has, Ridley Scott has, that also has all these big ideas, which is where Christopher Nolan's strength is. His ideas, at the end of it, you're rethinking is, oh man, how did that work, and how does that apply to what makes us human? And Ridley Scott has that in spades with his one example with Blade Runner, but he also has the emotion, which I said Nolan has struggled to bring. And so it's not like I think Ridley Scott's not bringing emotion at the expense of the cerebral part of it. I think he's able to bring both. I think you can walk away from Black Hawk Down or Gladiator, and you can have all kinds of questions about, wow, the Romans lived in a certain way, that's fascinating, or wow, warfare in the modern world is tough in African countries. You have all these cerebral thoughts, but also, the end of Gladiator is a gut punch emotionally, and there are lots of points throughout Black Hawk Down that are a gut punch. So, there's just 3 off-the-head examples of technically amazing movies. The craft is impeccable. They're also very smart films. He picks very intelligent stories, and yet he doesn't sacrifice emotion. And I don't think that you can pull that triple threat out of Nolan's films just yet. I think he'll probably get there. But I think that's why Ridley Scott is superior at this point, because he's had more time to develop, and he's really used that time and that natural gift he has. And I just think he's at a higher level. And that's it for me.
All right, Brian. Rebuttal for you.
Okay. I just wanted to touch on 3 points. Christopher Nolan's a huge proponent of film stock, using film stock rather than digital. The reason for that is that he feels that... I actually have a quote pulled up. I'll read it really quick. I am not committed to film out of nostalgia. I'm in favor of any kind of technical innovation, but it needs to exceed what has gone before, and so far nothing has exceeded anything that's come before. And I think that's a very valid statement. I think one could argue, yes, there are definite benefits of using digital, but quality is not one of them. It's not quite there yet, and I admire him for taking that stand and leading the charge in helping preserve film usage in Hollywood. Also, he sits on the board of the Directors Guild. I've watched numerous interviews that he has actually done the interviewing of other directors, and very fascinating to listen to. Very smart man, as Cody's mentioned, very educated. just one little jab at Ridley Scott. I searched him as well because I wanted to see what he was on, and his picture isn't even in the Directors Guild, which is a travesty. I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to be there at all or anything, but it said no image available, and I thought that was kind of a bad deal for him. I'm not saying he shouldn't be there, obviously, but also, and then my last thing that I'll say, I believe, is Bryce, you're familiar with the Criterion Collection. We talk about it quite a bit here. It's kind of the standard bearer of, they curate these incredible films from all over the world, and so that we don't have to, kind of search them out and look for them. A lot of us have other lives that we live beyond film, but anyways, like I mentioned before, his first feature film is in the Criterion Collection, and Ridley Scott doesn't even have a Phantom page, which means he's not associated with any of the Criterion films. Again, I'm not saying that is warranted. A lot of times it's studios and things that get in the way, but I think it's a good indication, those few different snapshots, the Directors Guild and the Criterion, of who is on the right trajectory. With so little time, he's moving in the right direction and has made wakes in his past, in his films. So many people esteem him as one of the greatest directors that are alive today, including Cameron, Del Toro, Boyle, Carwai, Soderbergh, Scorsese. It goes on and on. The who's who of Hollywood. This is the go-to guy. He's up and coming and is great, and that's all I can say about him. He's one of my favorite directors for sure. Top 5 for sure. So.
All right. So we've gone back and forth, and I don't really know what to say. What I've gotten is a lot of you've insulted them a little, but then you kind of apologize. So right now, before I decide, I need each of you to give me one blanket statement of why your director is better and why the other director sucks. No apologies, no anything. Why they're
You're trying
better,
to get us to
why
fight
the other
again.
one sucks. Cody goes first, and then right after Cody, Brian go, and then we'll call it from there. So Cody, go for it.
So I get one statement for my guy, and then I do one statement against. Is what you're saying?
Well, just one statement. Just tell me why your guy's better, why the other guy sucks.
Okay. Why Ridley Scott is better is he's a master of craft, but he also never forgets his audience. He lets them think and feel. That's why he's the best. Why Nolan is inferior is his lack of experience and his expertise in other areas besides filmmaking make his movies a less cinematic experience and also a colder experience that doesn't connect with you emotionally.
Okay.
All right, go, Brian.
Yeah. Nolan, 738 nominations, 446 wins, 8 Oscars, 2 Oscar nominations. Master of his craft with every genre that he tries out, and he perfects it and moves on, and he's great. Ridley Scott, I think that he does a really good job of telling a grandiose story, epic stories, but I think he falls short in kind of trying to make it more of a visual spectacle than really trying to tell a story that is not necessarily Well, okay. I got nothing. Come on, Ridley's awesome, but Nolan's better. There, I just shot the whole show. There you go.
Hey, I have one small correction, if that's okay. Nolan's movies may have been
I'm
nominated
sure
for
you
that
do.
many Oscars, but he himself's only been nominated once, personally, for best screenplay.
I know,
for
but
Memento.
as a director, you're the one that pulls together the whole crew. You're the one that is over visually everything, artistically, visually, auditorially. And here's one other side note: Nolan does not use second crews for filming, second assistant directors. He does everything himself. Some may say that's a shortfall because he can't micromanage, but he wants to leave his mark on every single scene that is in that film, and he's not going to sub it out to some crew that across the country. He wants to be there, and I think that's very telling of him as an auteur.
Well, I just wanted to, because you were saying he had that many nominations, and he didn't have that many nominations. His movies may have. I'm just saying. Just wanted to clear. Movies, that's all.
Sure.
That's all. Yeah.
But as a director, that's your film. You've put your stamp on that.
All right. So I'm going to make a decision. And this decision is difficult.
I bet.
Because I've seen more of Christopher Nolan's movies, more than I've seen of Ridley Scott's. But the ones that I've seen of Ridley Scott's, I've liked a lot. Like they're in, my top movies, along with Christopher Nolan's. But this is based purely on the arguments that were given. Ridley Scott's the winner. Ridley Scott has won this battle. I think that I really liked your point, Brian, of the awards. The one thing that which was kind of brought up near the end, but was that he's never been nominated for Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
That I could see, that I've found. And since we're doing directors, I did like your point of how, you bring the crew together to make this movie. That's all really impressive. His movies are impressive and have won tons of awards, but he himself has never been nominated. Ridley Scott's been nominated. He's never won, but I feel like that's my choice, Ridley Scott.
Congratulations.
So,
we
will see who Ridley Scott fights at a later date. But for now, our first battle, Ridley Scott is the winner. All right, any closing statements before we head out?
No.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Any more awkward? All right. This has been the Vol Filmcast. I am Bryce Thompson.
I'm Brian Hammond.
And I'm Cody Ryrie.
All right. We'll talk to you next time.